Hi there, and welcome to the Truth Verse podcast. I'm going to give you a quote, and you can tell me, when do you think that this was said? Here it is. Justice is driven back, and righteousness stands at a distance. Truth has stumbled in the streets. Honesty cannot enter in. When do you think that quote was put out there? To me, it seems to really capture where we are today. You know, in the 21st century, justice is driven back, righteousness stands at a distance, truth has stumbled in the streets, honesty cannot enter in. Here's when it was written. It was almost 3,000 years ago. It was the prophet Isaiah. He spoke around 700 BC. And what he was picking up on is people just don't know, which way is up anymore. He says, like the blind, we grope around the wall, feeling our way like men without eyes. People were all over the place. That is just no way to live. I think every day, multiple times a day, we ask ourselves a question, what's the right thing to do here? Or should I do this? Should I say this? Whether it's a project at work or how to, navigate our children, or even a decision for ourselves. We're asking ourselves, what's the right thing to do? And Isaiah, back at 700 BC, was seeing that people just don't know how to navigate, even themselves. God has given everybody massive giftings, massive potential, and great plans to prosper them. What a tragedy that we are completely groping around the walls trying to find our way, instead of opening up our eyes, seeking the path that God has before us, and walking in it. So it's not just our own lives that are compromised when we don't know which way we're going. It's all of the cogs and wheels that are interconnected with us in our lives. Justice is driven back. That's a problem. Righteousness is at a distance. That's a problem. Truth has stumbled, and honesty cannot enter in. Where we end up when we're not allowing God to define the parameters of how we each should live our life, we're giving up a life of integrity, reliability, trustworthiness, all hinges off of truth. And God also defines the parameters of how society should live, with social justice and righteousness. We can't do either of those if we're not hanging out from truth. It's so easy to see when we look around our country, why do we still have social injustice? Why do we still fight country to country, and even within our own countries, brother to brother? Why is there still racial discrimination, gender inequality, religious and political meltdowns? Why can't we just not live together? Well, we cannot truly live together because truth has stumbled in the street and honesty cannot enter in. And so it's going to continue, brother hating brother, discrimination, unrest, riot, and bitterness, so long as truth remains fallen in the street. So that begs the question, well, where is the truth? How do we bring truth back to center us so we do recognize what is the right thing to do, and we do advocate, therefore, from that righteousness, the right thing for society at large? Well, Psalm 119 says, "Your word is a lamp unto my feet, a light for my path." Psalm 1 states, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers." So there's two Psalms, Psalm 1 and Psalm 119, advocating that if we do want to find the truth and live in peace and prosperity, then we can find our direction in the Word of God. That's the lamp that says, okay, step this way, do not step that way. That's the truth. That's what has stumbled in the streets. That's what Isaiah was seeing back in his day, 700 BC. That's what we're seeing again today in our postmodern world. Society would tell you that, well, truth isn't absolute. Truth isn't objective. It's subjective. I can have my truth and you can have yours. That's just simply nonsense. If I spotted a nice Jaguar in the street and I said, oh, that's not my car, but I'm going to state this is my car and take the car as mine and leave my little Ford Fiesta in its place and say, no, that Ford Fiesta is now yours. I'm saying that this is my Jaguar. That's bogus. The same I declare over my husband. No, that's my husband. He's not your husband. Truth is absolute and it is objective. And I think when you fall for truth being subjective, you need to question yourself. Why are you saying it's subjective? What benefit do you have in taking the contrary view? Because I can guarantee you, if you're arguing that truth is subjective, that you're choosing to go against what the objective truth is. And rather than tell yourself, I'm stepping out of the objective truth, you're giving yourself a rationalization and saying, no, this is a truth too. Even though I think deep down, you recognize it's not. But you don't want to own that, because if you're saying that you're not living in truth, then that compromises our integrity. And once our integrity starts to go, we really are on shaky ground. So if ever you find yourself in that language of truth being subjective, I would recommend that you just take 5 minutes to your own thinking and assess, what is it about what could be? Just assume there is an objective truth. What would it be in that situation? And why are you not embracing that? What do you have to gain from taking the contrary to that objective truth? You're far better off just admitting, okay, this is the objective truth. I don't like it, so I am choosing to live against that truth. And just own that. At least you're maintaining your integrity in that. So here's some things to reflect upon. Firstly, why has truth fallen in the street? Why are we not able to rally around a single truth, even if that entails, well, I don't like some of those truths, and I'm choosing to not live around those truths? Why do you think truth has fallen in the street? Something else to think about: what is your process for qualifying the difference between an absolute truth versus a societal trend or news or media hype or whatever it is that social media is just telling us, this is the truth, take this? Why is it that we can take those as truths and say, no, this is an absolute truth, but yet we can still defy that absolute truth exists? Something else to think about: predispositions are established patterns that we hold to. We are usually aware of these and we can acknowledge their influences on our attitudes and behaviors. For example, you can say, I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, or I prefer tea, or I prefer coffee. Predispositions are different to biases. Now, biases are much trickier to determine because they operate under the radar, often without our own awareness. So, for example, it could be childhood influences or indoctrinated views that we don't even feel are there. Only people without a subconscious have no bias, and that's no one. Some people say to me, well, no, I don't have any biases at all. I can look at everything objectively. Well, I don't believe that. As a psychologist, if you have a brain, you have a bias. So everybody has a bias. The task is to be aware of them and manage them. We usually underestimate the covert influences of our own biases on our opinions and behaviors. We typically think we are operating with all clarity and above the board, and that's not necessarily the case. And at worst, we believe they don't exist at all, and we're not even managing them. So something to think about: what possible biases might you be bringing to your interpretation of truth? If your answer is none, I know I don't have any of those, then pray that the Lord would raise your own awareness to your biases so that you can manage them, because you do have them. And if you can't manage them, you are contributing to truth falling in the street. And one more thing to consider, being more aware of your biases. How have these wrongly informed your attitudes and behaviors over the past year? Who do you need to make restitution with, given your biases may have hurt someone? Have a think about that. This is Dr. Andrea LaFountain, your own personal psychologist and theologian. God bless.